Hello and welcome to this exceptional webinar on professional services firm. My name is Rajiv Shah. I'm the Managing Director and CEO of RBSA Advisors. I welcome you on behalf of RBSA. The subject of professional services firm, the development, the build-up, and the growth of professional services firm is quite a fascinating subject. It has not been discussed threadbare and in detail in the past. The whole landscape of professional services firm, and by which I mean all the accounting firms, audit firms, financial advisory firms, law firms, valuation firms, and all the like firms, where essential dependence is on people, and I should say near complete dependence on people. The questions that we have are many, and we have two of the very eminent and illustrious people here who have joined us to answer some of them. Now, the world of professional firms is quite unique that way. We need to understand what is the secret sauce of building a professional firm. Why is that the majority of Indian professional homegrown firms are subscale and they struggle to achieve a certain size and scale? Why is that professional firms struggle to differentiate? Why is that they sometimes struggle to make a very lasting impact? If I can use a word, that they continue to play in the small league. And at the same time, we have lots of large foreign firms operating in India who do well. So what is the difference between them and how Indian firms can cope up and come forward? Now, we have, as I said, two of the most eminent and illustrious professionals who have joined us today. They do not need any introduction. We have Bobby Parikh and Mukesh Butani. When I began my career, I was always enamored by what BMR was. Now they are the B and M of BMR. These are some of the best professionals one can get. And if I can give a very brief introduction, although I believe that they don't need any introduction. Bobby Parikh is currently the managing partner of Bobby Parikh Associates. He was the former CEO of BMR Advisors, one of the best well-known homegrown Indian advisory firm, which was created after the demise of Arthur Andersen. Bobby and Mukesh obviously are both co-founders. Bobby was with Arthur Andersen as their country managing partner for almost like 17 years. And thereafter, he became the CEO of EY India for a short stint of time. And after that, he founded, along with Mukesh and his other colleagues, BMR Advisors. Now we have him, and I'm very thankful, Bobby, for you to join us. Mukesh, on the other hand, is an on and out a leader in tax services. He's currently the founder and managing partner of BMR Legal and takes care of the legal aspects of things. He has led transfer pricing and international tax for two of the big four firms. In fact, he was a practice leader for both the firms. He was co-founder and tax practice leader for BMR. He sits on many government committees and advises, including Niti Aayog, Kelkar Tax Reforms Commission, and so many other committees. These, as I said, they've worked on some of the most complex transactions, and I believe they jointly created one of the best and most well-known Indian firm, BMR Advisors. Thank you, Bobby and Mukesh, for joining us. We look forward to a very interesting conversation. And I would jump straight into some of the questions that I have and which I answered. But before that, can I request if Bobby and Mukesh, if you can run us through your journey briefly, what were the initial thoughts? How did you create BMR? What was the thought and logic behind it? What was the thinking behind it? What was the passion behind it? If I can begin with Bobby and then with Mukesh, if you could maybe have an opening, if you could run us through your thoughts, and we'll be very happy to hear.
Sure. Thank you, Rajiv, for the introduction, and thank you for having me on this session. I think I guess we can sort of discuss at more length and with greater specificity when we sort of have the Q&A. But just from a sort of the perspective of BMR and what sort of went into at least my head when we set the firm up. I think it was a combination of a few things, but fundamentally, I think all of our decisions get shaped by our experiences that precede whatever we are doing, and our so my sort of thought on this was very significantly influenced by what I experienced at Anderson, which was really the only place that I had worked at for any meaningful length of time. I worked 17, 18 years at Anderson, and then for a very short period at EY. And I joined Anderson when it was a tiny firm. So I was employee number 8 in the firm, which included a secretary and a peon. So I was really professional number 6. I was one of 2 article trainees that the firm hired at that time, and there were 4 other people in the firm, professionals in the firm. And we grew, and I sort of watched I was part of that firm for 17, 18 years, during which period. So while it was a very small, it was a startup as far as India was concerned, it was still part of one of the largest professional services organizations in the world at that time, and was like that for at least for much of my career. It was the largest accounting firm in the world. And so there were many things which at least I think that Anderson did particularly well in as an organization, both globally, and I think that the people who I give a lot of credit to the people who set up the Indian practice, because I think they did something fantastic as well in terms of the way that they built the organization, the focus that they had, the value systems that they fostered in people, and the whole orientation and attitude that they sort of embedded in all the professionals that came into the firm. I think that the firm did spectacularly well in its 17, 18 years, and in that short period of time, it became certainly the tax practice was the largest of the practices that the firm had, and it was larger than by the time the firm wound up, for no fault of India, but globally we had the Enron episode, and then the whole organization internationally imploded. And we then combined our practice with EY. But at that stage, when we looked at the landscape, the tax practice, which was the largest in Anderson, part of Anderson's practice in India, was larger than the big 4 firms put together at that time. And we were still a relatively small firm in headcount, and relatively small in terms of the number of partners. So on every professional service metric that one would look at in terms of assessing the effectiveness of a professional services practice, I think we exceeded those metrics relative to other firms by a very large margin. And we had built what in my mind was a very special kind of an organization, and a very high performance, very values driven organization. And somehow I felt, I mean, maybe I think that I just felt like I just had too much of Anderson in me, and it was difficult to adjust to other organizations. And I always sort of kept comparing everything that I saw with and looking at it through the lens that I was used to looking at. And I felt that I wasn't always very happy with what I was doing, and felt that we could actually the clients were being underserved, is what my sense was, and that we could set up that there was a need for a firm where we could set standards of professional excellence and standards of client service, which I felt were not being delivered. That Anderson did deliver them, but that the other firms in the market at that time did not necessarily deliver those consistently across the organization. So it's not that they were not doing it, but it was not consistently happening and happening homogeneously across the length and breadth of the organization. And so we really set up BMR with just that notion in mind, that we will set up something which sort of becomes known for professional excellence. And we will outthink, and we will out execute, and we will out deliver anyone else in the market in the areas of practice that we choose for ourselves. And that was sort of as much and as far as what we thought. There wasn't. So the mission statement was very simply this: to just set, to raise the bar on professional services, and we would do that. So that was what the thinking was behind setting up BMR. And I let Mukesh do more of some more of the talking. I'm sure he has many perspectives to this as well.
No, so thanks, Bobby, and thanks, Rajiv, for inviting and being so generous on the introduction, and I'm humbled to be speaking on your webinar. So I mean, I largely can relate to everything that Bobby spoke about. Though I was the 28th employee in Anderson, I'm sure that there were 8-9 people who were ahead of me who I had never seen in the organization. And whenever I used to ask in my first 1 month, where are these people, or so-called the ghost employees, and I was told that they are part of a division called MIC, which is Management Information and Consulting, because in those days Anderson Consulting was not born, and they are all gone for training to Chicago. And I used to always dream that one day even they will start sending tax people also to Chicago for training. I said it's not a bad place to be in. But on a more serious note, I did my training internship in a mid-sized firm, and it was fashionable in those days in Mumbai to pursue your graduation and CA and have an advantage of age. But I was pretty much the same age when I joined the firm. I mean, uh, I don't know if people know about it, but Bobby is just exactly 1 day older than me. But by the time I joined the firm, and frankly, I was looking out for a job that gave me some consulting experience. And I'd applied to a firm. Coincidentally, their offices were located in the E towers of Maker Towers, and Anderson office was located in F Tower. In those days, rank holders used to get a letter of offer, and I just went for a so-called walk-in interview at 10 o'clock, of course, with an appointment. And then 1 o'clock, I came out with a letter of offer. I did not sign the letter of offer because I told the then managing partner I need to really consult my father before signing the letter of offer. And I had 2 letters of offer, one from the firm in the E block and second from the firm in the F block, which was Anderson. And frankly, the idea of uh, coming out of, after qualifying, coming out of a mid-sized firm was to do some interesting work. And audit did never excited me in those days. And I had very little knowledge of tax other than filling out tax returns. So logically, my thinking was that let's get a consulting experience. I was very clearly told by the then Anderson organization in those days that we don't hire consultants unless they are graduates from IIM and have a BTech or a degree or so on and so forth, which is what was the orientation. When I joined the firm and I took up the offer for tax because it just sounded a firm that was very particular in those 3 hours of my interview when I was interviewed by everyone, including me. It sounded like this firm stands out for something quality, whether that was evident from the rosewood furniture that was there in the office or the managing partner walking in and out with the pipe in his office. So it sounded, for a 21-year-old person, that sounds extremely a catchy kind of an experience. Yes, I want to work in this organization. My experience in the first few years before I got on to adjusting to the organization was that though I was doing tax, tax as a subject was looked at very, very differently by my peers and by my colleagues. So whether it's got to do with specialization in a particular field, or it's got to do with an orientation where you were constantly uh, trained and groomed that think like a businessman, and I think even in those days, the tax practitioners of Anderson were forced to, as a part of the DNA of the firm, if I may say so, to think beyond tax, to think beyond technicals. And I just got onto one very nice, catchy quote, which one of the tax heads of another peer from a competition of Anderson, wanted to hire me. And he said, somehow I feel that you guys have made tax a very fashionable subject. I don't know what exactly he meant, but I do remember what he said. And I think I largely everything that Bobby mentioned. I think barring once in my life and career when I wanted to leave the firm, and I wanted to be, by the way, coincidentally an investment banker in the mid 90s. Bobby was the one who stopped me, and he said that, you know, you made considerable investment in this firm. If for nothing, you should get the, you know, return on your investment. So he was like a typical Gujarati businessman, return on investment. And I thought that he made a lot of sense. I made it to a partner immediately after that. That was a big return on investment because that's something that people look forward to. I think at the time of, so I considered my 2.5 years in BMR more as a extension of the Anderson organization, though in a different brand name and a different culture. You know, being the head of tax, I felt that the change from Anderson to EY did not impact me as much as it impacted my other colleagues, say in the audit practice. Frankly, the idea of BMR was something that Bobby had been thinking about, because Bobby left the EY firm early. He had sufficient time to think and reflect on it. My conversation with Bobby was thinking of changing my career and doing something different in life. One, because the thrill that we felt for first 16, 18 years of our life and our career, that was getting diluted a bit. And hence, you know, at the age of 40, you start thinking about doing something different in life. And that's how the idea evolved. And Bobby had obviously done a considerable amount of thinking, and his whole notion of creating a firm of the future, creating a firm which is a re-engineered professional services firm that gives more partner time, is focused on quality. And I asked a very naive question to Bobby, what happens if we don't get work? He said, Kush nahi, I mean, we will just sit and relax. No? What is there? What's the problem? So it started off with that, but I must confess that the timing couldn't have been better. We know all what happened to the growth rates in 2003. More importantly, what came as a surprise to us, certainly personally to me, was that your 16, 18 years of professional services experience, the Anderson card that you carried, helped us a lot. You know, we never realized that that brand, for all the reasons that Bobby spoke about, had immense value. Had immense value not just because Bobby was the managing partner of Anderson, but I felt that talking to my younger colleagues as well, that they said that if you carry that, it means something. It means that, you know, you are a very quality conscious person, and that you can stand up and hold on to a conversation in a social get together much beyond your areas of competence. So all of those things started getting associated. So that's briefly what the journey and the history is all about.
But again, if I can begin with some of my questions, which I thought maybe I'll ask you, that once you founded BMR, I'm sure you had all the other big four very much available there. And while I understand that you all were from a very, very pedigree background, it was still a new firm, and trying to compete in the same marketplace as the big four practically head on against them. So what is that? How did BMR, what was the initial thought about how would you differentiate and position yourself in a dominated, in a world which is dominated by other big four?
Bobby?
So I think the point, Rajiv, really is one of the words that you used in your question, which is core, I think, to everything that sort of is relevant from a professional services perspective in our context, and that is differentiation. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that because the question becomes that I mean, the fact of the matter is that none of us certainly most of the people who were the initial bunch of people who came on board at BMR had never seen life outside of the big four or big five. I mean, including Anderson. So most people were people who had started their careers at Anderson, then were in EY for a little period of time by default because we merged our Anderson practice into EY. So everyone was in EY also. But we only knew the large international firms, and so we were not we hadn't experienced life anywhere outside of these large organizations. And so the question became that if we were going to set, and we had seen the power of being in these large firms and how we could win work if we set our minds to it, and how we could, pretty much, if we decided that we wanted to get a particular client, then we would get it. And it was a question of, focusing hard enough and then putting some, and then chasing it, and we would win it. And it could be, for us, it would be one more client, but for a smaller firm, which might have been serving it, it might have been a very significant client for that firm, but and could create existential issues for those firms. But we, so over the years, we sort of felt like, I certainly felt like, what's the joy of being in a small firm? I mean, you just get eaten up by these larger firms, and they could sort of do that without even them realizing what they are doing. But but then many years later, I guess, when we did set up BMR, we said that, okay, if we have to do this, then this still remains true, that they can clean out a firm if they set their minds to it, because they are significantly more resourced than you can be, and how do you fight that? And so the only thing that then really, which you need to think very hard, is that how are you going to differentiate yourselves from these firms, and so who do you want to be? Why do you want to do what you want to do? How are you going to be? Why will anyone want to come and work with you? So what is it that you're going to do? If you're going to do the same things that the other firms are already doing, then you must have some compelling reason. There must be some compelling reason why clients will want to come to you rather than to go to the big four. Since we had always worked in the big four, our aspirations were to work for clients which were similar, identical to the ones that we were serving in the big four. So we wanted to work with the large multinationals. We wanted to do complex.
So what was the compelling reason which you spoke about?
What was the compelling reason? Was really this, that we said that we will do tax. Now in tax, we had some advantage in as much as, at least the people that we had all drawn on board into BMR were relatively, some of the people were well known within the tax community, amongst international clients and amongst local clients, as good high quality professionals. And we said that we also sort of sat and looked at what was the way in which the big four were organized, and how they were serving clients, and where they might be falling short. And I felt like a large part of, one important part of where from a structural perspective, which we sort of did differently, was we said that the thing which made the most difference to a client or to a solution, quality of the solution that is developed, or the advice that is provided, is how much time do experienced people spend providing the advice. Because wherever our experience is that wherever a partner spends more time, and assuming the right people have been made partners, and wherever a partner spends more time, in general, the quality of the client experience and the quality of the advice that is delivered tends to be of a higher standard than would be the case otherwise. And the challenge with the larger firms has tended to be that the partner tends to get pulled in many different directions, and the amount of time that he's able to devote to each client tends to vary. And so we said that we will remove all the distractions on partner time. So the partner, if he's in BMR, a partner will have only one thing to do, which is that he wants to serve clients, and we will not have any other distractions or any other demands on his time. And we also said that we will reduce the number of people, the partner to staff ratio, or the size of the team that a partner would have to a much tighter team. So against averages which we used to work with of 1:20 or 1:25, we sort of capped the BMR team sizes at 10 people. Which meant that the amount of work that a partner could do was automatically limited by the size of his team, that he couldn't execute beyond a certain point because it would just not be possible. So we reduced the size of the team. We made sure that partners would spend, therefore, more time on everything that they did. And most importantly, we hired people in as partners, or we brought people into the firm as partners who we knew were passionate about wanting to work with clients. I mean, so they had to have the same desire to want to do outstanding client work. And so our ethos was that we will, so the point which I was making in the beginning, that we will outthink, we will out-execute, we will out-deliver. We said that we will do that, and we will do that because we will have the brightest people and the most competent people. And more importantly, those people will spend time doing nothing other than client work. And so they will be devoted to and dedicated to doing providing client advice, and not doing any other thing. That was not one of the many things that they do, but that is the only thing that they sort of wake up in the morning and do till they go to sleep, if they did go to sleep. So, so that was what I think that was what we were trying to do, and that is the sort of culture that we tried to build. And some of it is luck, right? I mean, we knew clients, and it took clients also. There'll be many people in the history of BMR who, in large multinational organizations, who stuck their necks out and said that and went against the grain of their organizations to say that we want to work with this firm rather than working with the international firm that they would have worked with around the world, or were also working with in India. So it took some of that support to make it happen. But I think then it was a question of, if someone did trust us, were we able to ensure that we out executed and out delivered and stayed true to our purpose.
Mukesh, you would like to add to this? Any thoughts? I'm sure Bobby has covered.
So Bobby talked about differentiators. I guess every new professional services organization would like to talk about differentiators. But I think the difference lies in what those differentiators are. Are those really the differentiators? And are you able to consistently maintain those differentiators? I think with respect to all these three facets of differentiation, I'd like to believe, and I would say with being humble, that it was visible. Now, how was it visible? Let's look at some of the aspects that were talked about in terms of quality of work. Did the clients see value creation in that quality of work? Were we seen as path setters in many of the things that we did with regard to our teams, with regard to our clients, with regard to initiatives that we took as a part of the larger tax and transaction fraternity? And I would like to believe that we did really tick the box on most, if not all of them. A large part of that credit goes to Bobby, because he's got immense patience and ability to think through issues, which exhausted a large part of his initial years in the firm, but that was required and necessary in order to build the momentum that he's talking about. You see, what happens is that when you reflect on success and look back, it is only those people who were a part of that struggle to achieve that success, they can value more than others. Now, bear in mind that when the firm started, besides the snide remarks that you get from people, is it a startup or is it an upstart? We were dealing also with real perception issues in the market. And I'll just take a minute to explain the perception issues, because one of the important uh, building blocks of the firm was that if senior partners have to devote more time on client service, senior partners ought to be technicians as well. Now, senior partners can't just be technicians, but they have to be marketeers as well. So, with the responsibility in an entrepreneurial firm on senior partners to be technicians as well as marketeers, was further compounded by the fact that there was a perception in the market that Bobby has been in a management role for a considerably long time, and how will he come back as technicians? Mukesh has been in a management role. I mean, being head of tax in a big four is a management role. Let's accept it. And then the question is, how much heads of tax do really spend time? Though, even if I look at it today, the scenario where heads of tax are, some heads of tax even today are technicians. They may not be perfect technicians, but they are surrounded by good people. You see, otherwise you cannot bring out the differentiation that Bobby talked about in terms of quality of work and value creation. And if you're unable to, in the initial days, you're not going to be able to build that franchise, because clients will never see that value. So I think, in my view, this was a very, very complex thing, and every entrepreneurial firm will face this. Senior partners are technicians as well as marketeers as well. But so one is to talk about differentiation. Second is for the differentiation to be felt by your clients, by your people, and by the larger fraternity as well.
So again, as you expressed, so you focused on lower leverage. I mean, higher partner to the partner to staff ratio was more skewed in favor of partners. So essentially, you yourself said that you would focus on doing less but high quality work. But again, would they have sufficient time in normal traditional firms? There's a lot of pressure for partners to go out and pitch for work and do more business development and things like that. So was that sufficiently happening? Would that not constrain the growth of the firm? Because beyond the stage, apart from execution, one would also have to look at winning new work.
You know, sorry, go ahead.
Mukesh. No, go ahead. I was saying, go ahead.
You talked about business development. I have a very different view about the concept of business development, and really what I see in the larger professional services landscape today. And in BMR, we looked at it very, very differently. Now we have to start with an assumption that business development and new business and growth is a lifeline of an organization. Actually, it's a more serious lifeline for an entrepreneurial firm than to a large organization, because a large organization can survive with a stronger balance sheet and deeper pockets. An entrepreneurial firm cannot survive, and it was certainly true. I keep on telling everyone whenever I get this opportunity to talk on professional services firm, the business planning exercise in the Anderson organization was all about top line. The business planning exercise in EY was all about middle line. How can I save the cost? The business planning exercise in BMR was all about how much cash do I have in the bank, at least in the initial day. So you see, in the life cycle of one professional, how this set of priorities change. So when I'm making this statement on business development, I'm making this in all earnest, keeping in mind that new growth opportunities are the lifeline of an organization. But I totally am not supportive of the business development as a subject in professional services firm in today's environment in general. There may be outlier situations. Targets are assigned, focus is only on numbers. Now, what happens in that situation? Technical skills go out of the the ability to think out of box gets impaired. It creates a sense of insecurity in the organization amongst peer groups. So I think I would like to believe that in BMR, amongst few things that we did right, one of the things that we did right was a focus on business development. There were times when this pressure was there on targets. I'm not denying that. But for a fairly large part of the firm, the targets were secondary. So nobody was kind of penalized for not meeting the targets. The target setting was very different. Today, I talk to my friends in the big four. It's all about targets. You can't meet a target, you have a serious problem. And I can tell you that's the most finest partners I have come across who have been either my former colleagues or who are very, very well known in the fraternity to be amongst the finest professionals. They are stressed out because they say this target is something which is overwhelming. So I think a heavy part of our time did go on the so-called business development, because that's a responsibility that should be taken by senior partners, that should be taken by more experienced partners, and that should be taken by partners who have the aptitude, who have a flair for going and uh, selling work. I'm also reminded of a philosophy that one of my former network partners told me. He said that in an entrepreneurial organization, you frankly cannot sell with what you can't produce. So you have to produce it and you have to sell it as well, because you can't just do one at the cost of the other. So I think that what did we do well to sell clients? I think that the foundation of the firm in terms of differentiating ourselves, taking better quality work, uh, you know, even operating at a level of pedestal higher than our peer firms. Now, what happens when you set up an entrepreneurial firm, and this is again a challenge which we saw with many of the other domestic firms who are not a part of the Big Four network. They'll go to clients and say, we'll do this work for less than their price. In fact, we used to take a lot of pride in saying we are more expensive than the Big Four. Many of my former partners tell me that now that we are a part of the Big Four, those same very clients who paid premium in BMR say, now you please reduce the fees down to the Big Four fees, which your own firm is charging. Now, these are their observations. So I think that the pride factor also came in. So all that was spoken about in the context of, uh, you know, BMR differentiation, on quality of work, on value creation was visible, and that became a sense of pride, not just for the partners, but even for the larger organizations, the team members as well.
Okay, but continuing on that thought, and maybe it's an open question to both of you. As a professional firm, it's always, we say it's constantly on a treadmill. You are always on an escalating ladder and you have to run faster and faster, not just partners to fulfill their ambition, but also to ensure that the ambitions and the dreams of the associates and the managers and the directors are also met. So it's a constantly, there is a, that growth is essential for its survival. You know, with a low leverage, so many, would you have that constant challenge of balancing growth and quality? Because if you do too much quality, naturally you will not be able to focus on growth. So that's a constant trade-off that and maybe you must be working on.
Yeah, so that's very true, Rajiv, and I think striking that balance is I think it is always an elusive goal. I think you can sort of try in different ways, but it's always a challenge. And therefore, I think that really the question becomes, and this goes back to a point about sort of foundational issues, that what do you want to be, right? And we used to have many conversations in BMR also that when we were 500 people or whatever, and we were growing at a certain pace, and we found that the larger firms, which were the big four firms, which were much larger than us, were growing at a faster pace than we were. And so the question became that how can they grow at a faster pace when they have such a large base, whereas we are much smaller? We should be growing at rates of growth which are faster than their rates of growth. But the thing is that this becomes a trap that you can fall into, because the minute you start comparing your game against their game, our whole thing right from the beginning was that we cannot fall into the trap of thinking like the big four and behaving like the big four, although that is our DNA was also big four kind of DNA, but we said that we have to be we are not the big four now that we have set up BMR, and you cannot be like the big four. And if so, then you cannot grow like the big four, because they have many more arrows in their quiver. They have lots of things to fire. They have many different ways in which work they can compete in the market for work. They have international relationships. You can have whatever relationships you have, but they are you can only add as many as you can. I mean, there is the power of the network, which is throwing things into different countries which you'd never have. So it's it's an unequal battle if you were to then sort of keep playing the if you have to define your own battlefield. If you sort of allow that to become your context, then it's a very unequal battle, and you're bound to be dissatisfied, and you're bound to be very challenged. So the question becomes that, therefore, if you want to be a high quality firm, then you have to recognize that, okay, how many people am I going to get? How many clients am I going to get? And therefore, what is the ability of this firm to, to keep growing and to sustain growth over a period of time has to be very carefully calibrated. So there may be no size prescription that such a firm can only have 50 people, or such a firm can only have 300 people, or something like that, because there's no formula like that. But you have to judge for yourself that, what is the core of your differentiation, and how much can you and differentiation is sort of is the basis of your survival, right? So if you cease to differentiate, then you cease to have the right to survive. So how do you keep differentiating? And if the day that you feel like I've grown to a point where I feel like my differentiation is diluting, then you know that you have to sort of draw the line somewhere and say that maybe I need to pause, and I need to recalibrate, because this is where I feel like I'm compromising. And this is all good in theory. It's very difficult to sort of execute in practice. And most times you will realize it, a little after you cross that point. But you can retrieve the situation. But it depends on how strongly you want to sort of, how you sort of make an assessment, and how you want to drive your destiny.
Bobby, one of the theme of this conversation is differentiating. So essentially, our people are the only resource. So you ought to have the very best talent available with you to able to demonstrate how you are better and how probably the best in the field. Now, how a small firm with limited resource, and I'll speak for large Indian community now, in a country where there is a lot of fetish for working in foreign firms, there is a lot of fetish for working in MNC firms. How was BMR able to attract the best talent and retain the best talent?
Mukesh, do you want to go?
Again, Rajiv, any professional services firm believes in great client service. No professional services firm will hold out that they don't provide anything less than great client service. Now, this belief has to be translated in reality, which means that an organization should not just believe, but actually possess great client service skills, which, as you correctly pointed out, is dependent on people. In today's environment, client handling at the cost of professional dignity has become a norm. Let me give you examples of the early days of the firm. Bobby spoke about high value transaction because of our DNA, what kind of clients we should be working on. How many times you see a professional services firm saying, I don't do this work, I'm not good at it, you're better off going to another professional service provider. if you ought to be rendering good client service, then you ought to possess a client service skills which is far more superior than peer firms. And you have to make that assessment yourself. Frankly, our human instincts tell us whether we are better or not. Because if our human instincts are driven by the fact that profit maximization is my objective, then you will never let that work go away. The two examples that I want to talk about was that when the firm started, some of the partners brought in the opportunity that clients are asking us to sign on the tax audit report. Now, tax audit report, a chartered accountant will bear with me, is nothing but attest work. It's not audit in the strict audit sense, but it's an attest work. That went back to the ethos of the firm, because when the firm started, we were just coming out of the Sarbanes-Oxley law of 2003, where independence became a big issue, you know. And as a result of the independence argument, the divide between an audit or an audit function should not do any non-audit work, that debate was very much alive. So we were very clear when the firm was set up that we will not do any attest work. Now so one thing is to say that that's the principle. It strikes to the basic ethos of the firm. But those ethos got tested at the time when we had to tell the partners, we will not do tax audit work because it is an attest function. You see, this is a simple principle like the principle of honesty. When is the principle of honesty tested? Not when the person who makes the statement that he's honest, but when there is a money on the table and he doesn't pick up the money on the table. I'm presuming the money doesn't belong to him, because that's the time the principle and the ethos of honesty are treated. 3 years down the road, you may bear in mind that these special economic zones law came into effect. One of the biggest challenges that large multinationals who had captive SEZs in India was facing was that service tax refund. Now, service tax refund became a money-making opportunity itself for professionals. Not just for the large firms, but even for the local firms. Yes. We all know how these refunds are processed. We all knew the ethical and the non-ethical part of it, but we applied the smell test. We said we will not do this work because it entails something that either you or your subcontracted contractor will do, and those means are questionable. They may not be questionable from our typical jugaad Indian policy perspective, but they are questionable from an ethics standpoint. So we said we will not do it. The reason I wanted to give you this two examples of tax audit we don't want to do and service tax refunds work that we don't want to do is because we wanted to drive this message which did strike to the basic root of the organization. And I must confess that it was not that there were a group of senior partners who was driving it. There was a debate, there was a discussion, and we came all out by saying it is not in the interest of the firm to do this kind of. So I think when you talk about client service, differentiator, quality and all, you have to make sure that it is seen, felt. Now, let me tell you one thing, these issues of this nature may have been debated only by partners, but the message flows into the larger organization, and the larger organization then is a part of the ecosystem that this is what the leaders of our organization believe in, because these are the true ethos and values of the organization, which I think is very critical for any professional services.
I agree, Mukesh, but maybe my question was more towards how do we retain talent? I mean, how would you go and attract? Ethics is important. I completely buy your point. So you were known for that and you display that and everyone would believe. So it is not that it is only shallow words, but it is reflected in your conduct as well. And the whole organization would believe that, Mukesh. But how it is possible for a firm like yours, a smaller firm, I mean, you had all the big giants competing with you to attract very best talent to work for you, because how does that go?
But so Rajiv, these are all very real challenges in terms of at least and, and BMR experienced it as much as anyone else has experienced. The larger landscape of Indian firms. I think we all experience this challenge because the general aspiration and to to sort of in a way jump to the what might be the end of the conversation about what happened to BMR, and if everything was going so well for BMR, why did it where is it today, and it's not there today, is because part of it is that these challenges are there. There's lots of our partners felt like their future would be better served still in a larger international firm than in BMR. So it is a big challenge, so it is a fully, the accounting profession at least is a fully mature market with and fully integrated into the global landscape. So the largest firms in the world are operating in India, and a single sole proprietor is operating. There is no barriers to entry. Anyone who's a chartered accountant can set up. But then there are these large firms which are sitting in the market who are enormously powerful and have lots of resources, and you have to carve out a space for yourself. So I think that the thing has to keep on being that how do I create a niche for myself in this thing, and the niche can be whatever it is. It doesn't have to be that if you pick, let's say I feel like you take an area, and even in tax, and you say that I don't want to do everything to be everything in tax, but I will be a very good personal tax advisor to clients, or I will be a very good valuation firm, or I will be yes, is it something that the Big Four do? The Big Four do everything, but I do this exclusively, and I will look at it, and if this is what I want to do, then how do I assess the competition? What is it that the Big Four is doing? Where are they doing it as adequately all the time? Where can I make a difference? And I will build a firm around valuation, and I will not do anything else, but this is what I'm going to focus on. And then you build a reputation for being that. Then you start drawing clients who will seek you out for that, and then people who want to build a career and who have interest in that area of works, and then start seeking you out and saying that if I had to do work in this area, where is it that I'll get the most exposure? Where do I work with people who are doing high quality work in that particular segment? And then you sort of create that niche, and it may be whatever it is. Now and even then you have to bear in mind that when you really train someone and he becomes an outstanding professional, all the Big Four keep sitting and looking and saying that, okay, fine, where do I spot a really high quality professional? You can be paying him 100, it might be more than what his peers may be getting paid in the Big Four. But for a individual to cherry pick him out of your organization, they can offer him 150, they can offer him 200, we'll ship you out to Singapore for 3 years or something like that, and then you come back, any incentive, and then you still lose that guy. So these are challenges which you keep encountering, and you just have to put your head down and go back to the drawing board, and you develop the next guy, and you develop the next guy, and you keep doing that. And I felt, at least philosophically, that there will come a point in time at which if there is a sufficient number of reasonably competent, high quality firms that create niches for themselves in the market, then people will start exercising their own judgment in terms of what kind of a firm they want to work for. I don't think that there is yet enough of that in the market. There is a lot of firms in the market, lots of professional services firms, but I think the shape of this keeps changing. But you need to create some. It's all a long game. So you need to be there for the long game and sustain. And then people can say, I mean, for me, for BMR, I felt like people should have. We do high quality work, but the Big Four also do high quality work. You have a choice. We represent a different kind of a firm from the Big Four. There are strengths in the Big Four, but there might be things which you may not like also, and there are things which might be clear weaknesses in BMR, but there might be things in BMR which you might not get in the Big Four. So when you come out of college, or when you are a professional at any stage of a career, and you want to sort of pause and reflect and assess and say that where do I want to spend my time as a professional, then you should be able to create alternate ecosystems which are attractive for people to say that, okay, fine, everything is not comparable, but there are some things which you will get in this firm which you're not going to get in the Big Four, and it becomes a choice which people exercise. So that is eventually the place where it needs to get to. So if in the really large markets, if you look at the US, you look at UK, you look at Europe and things like that, the big four are there, but it's not as if there are not very high quality mid-sized firms which operate and which do very high quality work with companies. You just have to figure out what and how you can be that and survive over a period of time.
No, I'm absolutely with you, Bobby. And if I look at US, I mean, which is a much matured market, and the shades of that are visible in India now. If you talk about high quality tax advice, you have Big Four, then we have GT, BDO, then we also have a very strong Dhruva who is doing very well. Transaction Square and many other firms which are very niches which are developing. In indirect tax, we have Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan, and so many firms, very, very good quality law firms. So I buy your point. And in matured markets in US, in Europe, you would have many firms which represent very, very niche areas where they are fairly strong, or maybe as strong, or probably it could be stronger than the Big Four in that. So to that extent, India is still in the development, the market is still in the development phase. Moving to a next set of questions. So far right now we were maybe talking from a BMR perspective. So now I wanted to touch base a little bit on the professional firms landscape, which is, and I'm restricting, I'm not going to the law firm because there is a different element. They are protected to some extent, and foreign law firms are not allowed to practice in India. So I'm restricting my conversation to tax, accounting, audit, financial advisory, valuation kind of firms, which are open markets. Now, the way I see, and Bobby and Mukesh, it's both to both of you, I find that not many Indian firms have been able to scale up that well. Maybe BMR is an exception, Dhruva could be an exception, a few people like us, we could be an exception, but not many firms have been able to scale up that well. And a lot of dependence Indian firms or homegrown firms have on the stature and the vision of the leader. And sometimes if they are not able to scale up, they eventually fall in that vicious decline, the circle of decline. And eventually the foreign firms start getting more and more market share, and their niche clients and the best people are taken away. So what's your take on that? What is that these Indian firms in smaller towns, the Jodhpurs and Jaipurs and Ahmedabad and Hyderabad of the world have to do? These are good quality firms. They have been around for 30-40 years, have good 30-40 people with them right now. But still, they are not able to retain their best clients. They're not able to retain their best people. And eventually, they are in a downward spiral, or if not on a downward spiral, they are not able to grow in accordance with their aspirations. What is these firms need to do? I mean, it's a much larger question, but I think I'll let you have your say on this.
First of all, Rajiv, you have to define what do you mean by saying scaling up. Bobby made this reference a while ago that in the BMR context, you are really looking at that. If you're looking at the Big Four as a peer firm, that every year a peer firm, say a Big Four firm, was adding one, if not two BMRs. Now you can never get to that level. So I think you need to have a context when you say by saying scaling up. My idea of scaling up, lessons from BMR experience, is that you have to always calibrate your growth. You have to be very strongly focused on building stronger culture, being surrounded by people who don't just believe in that culture, but who espouse the values in everything that they do in the organization. And that takes time. It's much more easier for a large organization to have that culture. You will bear with me that in the mid 80s and even in the early 90s, why is it that people from our profession who opted for banking as a career looked at, say, a Bank of America or a Citibank or an American Express? Because these organizations had very strong culture, and there were good and bad things also about those culture people who opted for an ANZ Greenlays or a Standard Chartered Bank. So the culture point is not whether it's good, whether it's necessarily good or bad, but there are good and bad things about the culture. I think that the Western counterparts in professional services, whether it's a law firm, accounting firm, or financial advisory firm, have done a far better job of institutionalizing professional services firm. The coming back to closer to why there hasn't been growth of Indian firms, there are a variety of reasons for that. I think many of the reasons are attributable to how we as Indians look at our organization. For lack of any better words, you would have heard this comment that this is a good firm, but it's a family-run firm. It's a good firm, but it's a family-run firm, which means that the future managing partner or the CEO of the firm will have to be a family member. And so the larger firms have done a better job in terms of creating a more, I would say, merit-oriented organization. Now, why is that so inherent amongst us as Indians? It could be selfishness. It could be inherent sense of insecurities. It could be don't let others shine. The founder and the managing partner and the managing partner's kids get more media visibility. And you can see that the succession planning is speaking out. I know you left the law firms out, but early this year, India Business Law Journal ran a editorial in which I was, kind of asked questions on succession challenges for large law firms in the country. And it's a very widely quoted and read piece. And I said that there is a real challenge of sorts for the law firms, the large law firms, insofar as succession is concerned. So I think that this is a challenge which is more inherent with the Indian culture. The Western parts have done a good job. I also feel that another thing that inhibits local firms in accounting, financial advisory, is also the sharing of profits. Because, whether we like it or not, money becomes a common denominator. If you need to hire a good talent, you need to pay well. You need to give them a good environment. You need to challenge them. You need to be an equal opportunities firm. We all know these principles, right? But if you need to have a good partner, you ought to make him believe that he's actually a salaried partner. So we never had a Class A, Class B partner. Bobby and I lived our entire career in a partnership which had only one form of partnership. So I think that a combination of our DNA, the way we work in India compared to the way Westerners have looked at it, a combination of money and financial aspects, very often, and this has become more frequent after the larger firm was transitioned into the Big Four post 2017. At least 4, 5, 6 large mid-sized firms have come, and they would focus only on those specific aspects when they pose you a question. So what did you do different from knowledge sharing standpoint? What did you do different from a market and BD standpoint? How did you create this brand? But very few people are raising this question: how do I fairly remunerate my employees? How do I make sure that I have a partnership distribution culture which is fair and equitable? And I think that's also an area where Bobby spent a lot of time in the initial days, setting out the processes for partner assessment and partner compensation. And trust me, you can't pick out a Big Four learning that he has had as a managing partner of Anderson or CEO of Ernst & Young and implant it in an entrepreneurial organization. So it required a lot of thinking. And I would like to believe that that's one thing we really got it right, that there is a fair and equitable system. In fact, many times the feedback we used to get was that we think you guys are too harsh on yourselves by remunerating you, because our sharing structure was also fairly transparent, not entirely transparent, and people had an idea about how much money the partners are making. So I think that's also a big challenge for local firms, and I think so it's more got to do with the change, the sharing philosophy, which would make domestic firms more competitive.
Mukesh, can I then say, and I mean, playing a devil's advocate here, that the India, so we have ourselves to blame. I mean, while MNCs were there and they are very natural, they are good, and they have the learning of the whole world with them, and they have the past systems and processes. So the Indian firms are more dependent on the caliber or the stature or the vision of their leader, whoever that is, whereas the big four are more process driven, more systems driven, and everything is already set. Because here one person has a disproportionate power. I mean, things do not work out and other professionals do not see their future in that, or they don't have space to grow.
I mean, I think that Rajiv, if I, it may not be a very appropriate analogy, but just to sort of say that, okay, you got, a Hindustan Lever in the market and you've got a Nestle in the market, but you still have a Dabur in the market, or you have a Marico in the market, or a Calvin Care or whatever. I mean, and Godrej, and they're all different shapes and sizes of companies which have been built, all operating in the same sort of, many in the same market segments, but then all of them sort of very effective and successful, right? So now the thing is that what Dabur has been able to do is to say that, okay, what can I do differently from, again, I'm sort of singing the same tune. And I think that the issue becomes that, people will, how much you can grow the firm, what kind of cachet do you, what is the, how inspiring or aspirational does it become for people to want to join that organization? How aspirational does it become for people who want to remain in that organization? Are all things ultimately based on, what is the pride that you get and what is the satisfaction that you get out of being in that firm, and could you get satisfaction somewhere else? Now there will always be people who come and say that, the grass looks greener on the other side, I want to go there, and stuff like that, and that's going to happen. And large MNCs have a gravity which is very strong, and therefore they will keep sucking stuff into their gravitational sphere, and the smaller firms in the ecosystem will willy-nilly get dragged into this sphere as it goes. But you have to keep, and therefore as the smaller firms, we have to keep looking and being far more innovative and very rigorously keeping on looking. And I think it needs to happen at a very regular interval to say that, am I in the right space? Am I doing the right things? And I would never worry about size. I would never worry about scaling up. And I would say that, I have to keep being in the right space, doing the right thing. And the size then becomes an outcome of doing the right things rather than it being the objective driving the organization. So the objective of you have to be very clear about what is it that distinguishes you, what is the field in which you want to. You can be the number 3 firm. You can say that I will do third tier work. That the clients below the big 4, clients below GT and BDO and things like that. I will go for clients that are not targeted by these 2 sets of firms, and I'll be the best firm targeting those in my market, which is Ahmedabad or which is Surat or which is Jodhpur or Jaipur or whatever it is. But have a clear strategy and then keep looking at it to say that, is this strategy relevant or not? Because the big 4 also will one day open a shop in Jodhpur, or they will open a shop in Jaipur. Then they will go after many of those clients. So then you need to change tack and say that, okay, if they are going to get into that, now either I have built such a kick-ass organization that they can't get my clients, even if they parachute someone in from Bombay or Delhi or wherever they do that, because I'm here and everybody knows me and it's not so easy for people to come and displace me. Or I have to say that, okay, if they are going to enter into some of this space, and I will now fine tune my niche further, and I will then start doing a certain kind of stuff. And then you have to keep, I think and you have to then tailor the rest of your organization to, to fit what it is, fit to suit. So, so therefore, if I'm doing a particular kind of work, I will attract a particular kind of people, and I can afford to pay a certain kind of salary. So now I can't say that I want the same superstar fellow who can, go to EY or PwC or whatever, and I want him in my firm, because then they're going to give him a different exposure, they're going to give him different work, they're going to give him different things. So I need to say that, okay, who am I? And I will then look for what I can hire and what I can motivate, and what is appropriate for the kind of work that I'm going to do. And recognizing that, if there's a really bright guy, maybe he will get tempted to go across to the other side, and maybe he'll get targeted by one of these larger firms, and he might go. But so be it. Now, this is par for the course. I mean, the big four also keep losing, but they lose to one another. So it's not as if once the people go into the big four that they're sitting in that firm forever. They keep. There's not a single. I think most big four CVs will have at least 3 big four firms on their CV, if not all 4 firms. So aisa hai abhi. There's no, so no one sits in one place. So it's just tougher for the smaller firms, and it's but I just feel like the challenge has to be answered by saying that, by having a very clear sense of purpose for yourself, and then saying that if this is my purpose, this is my objective, this is who I am, this is what I can do best, this is why I want to do what I'm doing, and then the rest of it has to fit that story, and you have to be true to that.
One more maybe a question to both of you, and Mukesh, maybe you can take lead to answer it. All the examples, including BMR, Dhruva, or Transaction Square, the good quality firms which have been in past and currently available, have been either a spin-off or a split off of a big four. So essentially, they were big four, and over a period of time, a big five in your case, Arthur Andersen. So essentially, they were a split off or a spin-off of a MNC. Now, there are very few examples, and I'll not say no examples, but very few examples of firms who have grown bottom up gradually over a period of time. So why is that not happening?
It's not just in India, but you look at that trend in other markets as well. It is there. I think if you come from a large firm, you certainly have an advantage of having seen how to run an institution, how to institutionalize, believe in sharing, believe in a spirit of cooperation, believe beyond what is in it for me. So all those ethos and learnings come if you work in a large firm. It's also incorrect, or not entirely correct, to say that the so-called boutique model has evolved only out of the big four partners. I think that at least when most of us qualified as chartered accountants 30-35 years back, we knew that there were many of these boutique firms that were there. Most of them, or rather none of them, had a national presence, but they were there. I mean, Mumbai, for example, the city where I also come from, had many large accounting firms. Over a period of time, either because of inadequate attention being paid on leadership transition, or they being bought over by the big four or gobbled by the big four, that class of firms have reduced over a period of time. But that does not in any manner mean that there is no scope for boutiques. I think that there is more scope for boutiques than there was ever before, because with so much of work being concentrated in the large firms, and with very few islands of excellence left in these large firms, I would say there is more scope for boutique. Instead, Rajiv, you should be asking a question: why, despite the domination of the large firms, these boutiques are mushrooming? And the reason for that is very simple. It's just simple quality. Clients are looking out for good quality. I don't think ever in my career, even as a counsel now, clients are concerned about fees. They want to pay good fees if you are able to deliver the quality. So maybe it's the quality that distinguishes large firms. So I think that a part of the change will happen because of a set of regulations that may come into the country on independence front, and part of the change will have to be driven by these so-called new age firms, because it is these new age firms which bring in a sense of different thinking than what the generation before us had, and build the firm. And that is what really drove us to build in an ecosystem where you're looked upon as an institution and not just an amalgam of the former partners or former colleagues.
Again, maybe a broader question to both of you. With so much technology changing, all the firms today, they look very similar to each other. I mean, if you amongst the big four or tier two firms, there is lack of that differentiation where it becomes a difficult point for, I mean, that gap and even if the competition does not have, shall I say, capability, the rhetoric of marketing would also create any differentiation between them, and it becomes very difficult for the client to set off one against another. I mean, all the big four have similar set of talented people, similar set of capability documents. So it becomes very, very difficult to differentiate between the firms. So what is that the firm need to, and with technology being so easily available, the knowledge is quite democratized. So it is the same level of knowledge is today available with practically everyone. So how do the firms struggle there, and what are the things that a firm needs to do and people need to do?
So I think that at least my I go back to a thing which we sort of experimented with in Anderson to address this issue, and we said, we were discussing and saying that if we had to, when we were making a pitch for something, and we knew that there would be 2-3 other of these international firms which would be bidding for that work, and we said that, okay, so all of us have very strong credentials. So how does a client? If I was the client, how do I decide something like this? And we said that let's do a very different thing. So we went to the client, and normally the thing will be that some of the senior partners or the depending on how large the pitch is, then the managing partner shows up and the head of the practice will show up, and we'll all show up for the presentation. And then the client will never see these individuals ever again thereafter, until again maybe the closing presentation is being made or something like that, and then the rest of the. So we said that who's actually doing the work, and those are the people that the client will actually interact with, and they should be the people that really should be showcased, rather than the managing partner or the head of the service line or whatever it is, because those fellows are not going to do the work. So we went into the presentation and we said that, okay, I'm whoever I am, but I'm not going to run this meeting. I'm not going to do anything with this thing. And you should not really be talking to us. Here are the people who are actually going to do the work. So if we are appointed, here is the team. And if you want to really understand, how good they are, or whether they understand what is required to be done, they have the competence to do it, you should interview them, and you should talk to them, and you should interact with them, including we took even article trainees into the room. And we said that, this will be the team, and these are the people who are going to work on your job if you appoint us. Please talk to them, and board doesn't need to talk to them. You get whoever is going to be your client, your project team, they should talk to these people and do them. We can keep, and while they're doing that, we can sit and have a coffee or whatever it is, because really you and I sitting and having a conversation doesn't mean anything. It's not neither that this is the execution team. And we found it very effective, and even now people don't necessarily do that enough to be able to say that here is the people who are going to do the work, and you test them, rather than looking at how well I speak or how much experience they might have or whatever. Because are you going to get my experience on the engagement or not? If you're not going to get it, then there's no point you're wasting your time talking to me, or my having some wonderful qualifications or anything, because it's of no use to anybody. So we did, so I think that's one way to do it, to say that, okay, here is a different way of thinking about it. And it does have an impact, and it does make a big difference to what the outcomes might be.
So I have final two questions, and then we'll open it up for question answers. And I have my colleague, I'll maybe request all the participants that maybe if they can send, there is a link for questions, and my colleague will pick it up and send it to me on a WhatsApp. So for last one or two questions, which is a more of a, so I'm a small firm sitting in Nagpur or some place, Calcutta. I have 10, 15, 20 people with me, 4 partners, and I want to grow and become, I have aspiration to become someone like a BMR. What is that I need to do for the next 10 years? What is the top 5 things that I need to do?
So at the cost of repetition, I would say that be clear about what you want to be and why you want to be what you want to be. It sounds very, very theoretical, but I find that lots of times we do many things when we are not clear about why we are doing what we are doing. And at least the core, if there are those 4 partners, they need to be sitting, they have to sit down and figure out for themselves that what is it that I want to do and we want to do and why is it that we want to do it. Once you get that clarity and everyone has the same shared objectives, then you can start saying that, okay, this is what we want to do. Then you start thinking about how you want to get about doing it. So depending on what the answer is that they come up with and based on their deliberations amongst the 4 of them, you then decide. I mean, BMR did only tax and did only transactions. It did only 2 things, and we chose not to do anything else. We declined other types of work. We could have grown into becoming a 6,000 person organization if we had taken on other. We had over all along in our existence, we had lots and lots of clients who came and said, why don't you do audits? And you take our audits, and while our top company might get audited by the big 4, we've got 30 other subsidiary entities and ventures and things like that, and we don't want the big 4 to do it. You do these audits, and we will underwrite your entire audit practice, whatever it costs to set it up, but you do the audit. And we said, we are not going to do it. And they said, why are you not doing it? Because it will be profitable and you make money out of it. And we said that we don't want to do it because it's not what we want to do. So I think that somewhere, and then tensions, if there are 4 partners who think alike, there'll be a 5th partner who will come along who might think differently, and then you get pulled into doing an audit, or you get pulled into doing an internal audit, or you get pulled into doing something that you didn't believe you initially should have been doing, and then you get diluted and dragged in different directions to a point where you then don't know why you are doing what you're doing, or why you are in the place that you are, and who do you really want to be. So I think that the first, you have to keep asking yourself, who do I want to be and who do I want to become? And if I want to do a certain kind of work, and if just size is the thing, is profitability a criteria, or is that not a criteria? Because those two also don't go hand in hand. You can grow very large, but you may be very unprofitable, or your profitability may remain where it is. I mean, if you talk to some of the larger firms, they keep growing in size, but if you take the metric of what it is on an average profits per partner, the average profits per partner may not be growing. So you are, so I can be managing 10,000 people and making whatever $1 million of profit, and I can be managing 20,000 partners and I'll still be making $1 million per partner or whatever it is as my profit, and that needle is not moving. So now, do I want to grow from 10,000 to 20,000, or do I want to move this needle from $1 million to $2 million? And what that might mean for me as a strategy and course of action that I want to take will be very different. So now this is, for talking about a 20,000 person strategy, it's very different from a 20 people strategy. But a 20 people strategy must still have the same ingredients. That what do I want to be? Do I want to become 100 people? What do I want my 100 people to be doing? What am I going to be doing to get from 20 to 100? Am I clear about that? Do I want to make more profit? Everything in a professional services firm, unlike a manufacturing organization, there is no profit, there is no increasing profit from scale. You keep adding people, that each partner needs a team. And all of that will be an investment for a period of time before the team starts making enough money to be able to sustain that partner and to pay back something to the rest of the partners who might have underwritten that growth. And before you know it, you then make a new partner who wants a new team, and again you are back into investing for that new team that comes up. So you really have to be very calibrated and very focused in terms of where you want to go and what you want to do. And I don't know that enough thought is necessarily put into that. So that's sort of my view. And I think that whether you're a 4-person or a 20-person organization or a 2,000-person organization, you have to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you will not get there. So
I'm with you, Bobby, very much. Mukesh, you want to add something
So,
there?
no, I can relate to what Bobby's saying. Very often, I jokingly keep on asking him that since Anderson was your first and last job, if Anderson firm had continued and someone else would have been managing partner, because I don't think he would have been on his sixth or seventh term as a managing partner. The firm would have allowed it, but he would have been in the firm. So how does he envision how big the firm would have been? Obviously, there's some degree of speculation. I didn't get an answer from him, but I'm reminded of a dinner I had with a retired Fortune 500 tax director who also happens to be a colleague in Duke Law. Uh, he was telling me that the challenge that your country has, Mukesh, is that your country has grown manifold. Now, this is a person who has overseen India for 30 years. He said your country has grown manifold in terms of size, opportunities, but he said that the growth of the large firms is even more unprecedented. And now that's great because the professional services firm has grown. It's not just the large firms, but also many boutiques have mushroomed. He said, but the biggest challenge that your country faces is on the quality. Because if today I have to pick up 5 top tax guys in the country, I know who I'm going to pick up. And I told him, just for namesake, please tell me who would be those 5 guys. He said, you'll be surprised to know majority of them are not from Big Four. 3 are part of boutiques and 2 are Big Four. And I asked him why these 2 Big Four partners. And he said that Big Four has become like an island of excellence. If I want a real estate or a transaction partner, I would pick this office, this partner. Frankly, that's the criteria I apply. Though I don't know very many audit partners, but when you sit as chairs of audit committee, who do you pick as the firm, or rather, who do you pick as a partner? So that's the thing. I'm also reminded of a general quote that a Harvard professor gave when he was on a visit to India, and it was nothing specific to big firms or large firms. He said the Indian managers suffer from 3 problems: overpaid, over-pampered, and over-promoted. So in the entire professional services space in the last couple of decades, we suffer from those 3. You go to a large firm in the US, and I still have quite a few friends of mine who work with Big Four in London. The principal will not walk the path of partnership because the principal wants a more work-life balance. In India, if you don't become a partner in a large firm, there's a social stigma that you carry that you are an underperformer. So rather than become partners in more mature economies, you pass on that to another group of partners. So I think that, and what that results into is that in knowledge-based organization, main ethos get diverted, in my view, and I call it that they go through a Bollywood syndrome, and the Bollywood syndrome is that the most talented actor is not a superstar. So what, you know? So I think that it's again got to do with our DNA and how we look at professional services. I'm sure it will mature and it will settle down, but I always get reminded of the Harvard professor's quote and what one of my old former clients told me about what he thinks about the Indian professional services space.
And guys, all this is great. I just wanted to ask a few last questions. Why BMR was doing so well, and it had a story, it had a narrative to say. I mean, it was we were all in awe of what you've created. Why did you decide to merge with Big Four, and why did it not continue to stay independent on its own? And maybe what are the learnings here? I thought I'll just pose this a very broad question to you. It's, I'm sure there is a different chapter here.
Bobby?
I think Rajiv, I sort of alluded to that somewhere in the middle of my something that I was responding to, but it again, I think it's the same thing. I mean, it's very challenging when there are very large international players in the market, and where you are doing something which is very similar to what they are doing. That force of attraction always remains very great, and so. You have to create your own force of attraction to be able to retain people, or to attract enough people, and to for everything that I said about growth being an outcome or whatever, but it does need to happen, whether it is sought or whether it is an outcome, but you need to get it, because if you remain stagnant, then that's also a problem. And I think that our experience, at least my view on what we had sort of created a very our whole philosophy in building BMR was to build it as an institution rather than a sort of founder-led and a founder-managed kind of organization. We wanted it to have the DNA of an institution and no smell of any proprietariness or anything like that. Didn't even want our initials in the name, but it became necessary because the institute wouldn't register the firm unless it had the names or the initials of partners who were there in the firm at that time. So we had no choice but to register the firm with our initials. Otherwise, we were not even wanting to put initials into the firm. And we said that every partner is equal and we will build an institution. I mean, so today I might be managing partner, tomorrow Mukesh might be managing partner, and then beyond that there will be other people who will take over. And we've actually said that we put fixed terms for ourselves, so that we did not remain managing partners for an indefinite period of time. So we all had 8-year limits, so 4 years and then 4 more years, and then after that we had to hand over, and that was it. And so no one would feel that these guys are going to squat in that chair forever and not allow any room for anyone else to grow or take over this responsibility or whatever it is. But even then, there is an attraction that people have for these firms, and those firms can offer opportunities which firms which are not the big four will not be able to offer. And I think that there were many younger partners who felt like their future would be better served if they were in the big four. Whether there was concern that my term was over, Mukesh's term was coming to an end. Will this, how will this firm hold together? Whatever might have been the different concerns that people may have had, and so we sort of had many discussions over an extended period of time, and we felt like if this is what many people feel, then we might as well be proactive about it rather than let the things fester and sort of keep on going on in the somewhere in the background. And we said that, okay, let's then, if this is how everyone feels, or a number of people feel, then let's just go ahead and actually, proactively align the firms or align practices, and let each practice then align with whatever it is in its best interest, rather than to, because really our only resources are our people. And at the end of the day, if 20 partners feel like that's what they want to do, and then and eventually they leave, then anyway you're back to sort of a point where much damage has been done. So we said, rather than doing it that way, let's be proactive, and if that's the larger will or desire, then that's what we should do. And that's what we ended up doing. So it's and therefore I think that it is a very challenging thing to be able to build and operate and run. Looking back, could we have done some things differently? Maybe we could have. Could there have been different outcomes? Perhaps there could have been. Was the proposition around which the firm was built a valid proposition? Yes, it was a very valid proposition. Did it get vindicated? It did get vindicated. We did out execute, we did out think, we did out deliver. Is there room for a firm which can do that? I do believe that there is room, and I still believe that there is a gap which can be filled or addressed. But I think it's a very challenging thing, and lots of, and which is, as I'm the first to admit that everything that we discussed on this program about being clear about objectives and being clear about where you want to take the firm and why you are doing what you're doing, etc., is all very good in theory, but it's damn hard to do in practice. You have to be very, very committed for the very long term to be able to make this happen. And I think that there will be a point when some people will be able to get over the cusp, and some firms will embed themselves in the landscape. And then as that happens, then there will be more choice that will get created, and it will encourage more Indian firms to be able to sort of grow, establish, and become uh, uh, meaningful players in the professional services market in India.
But again, BMR was it was an ideal, and we were all enamored by what you've created. And it was a sad moment for even outsiders when it got merged with Big Four. And any take there, Mukesh, maybe in addition to what Bobby had to say, anything that you want to maybe add there?
No, I wanted Bobby to have the last word, so nothing to add. I just wanted to say two things factually. One is that Bloomberg Quint, our friend Menaka Doshi, wrote a nice edit called BMR Advisors Competing on Quality. This was a tagline that was used by IIM Bangalore when they did an independent study, which study today is also run by Harvard Business, and it's available. And she said that what was the great quality also became a inherent limitation. The point that Bobby made on the talent. I was just looking at some of the old YouTubes and videos. I think one of the chart that we had put out on our firm's 10th anniversary was that when you talk about shared values, it's easy to use that word, but 10 out of 12 partners, the grouping of partners that came to build a firm in the first 4 months since its formation, in the first 6 months since its formation in October 2004, were there in the firm till at the time of the firm's 10th anniversary. So when you talk about shared values, those shared values have to be shared by the wider group of people. So, and as our luck would have had it, the talent erosion that Bobby talked about, we had 2 to 3 of our partners immediately thereafter, in a gap of 2 years, leave us immediately after the 10th anniversary. So I do believe that those were the defining moments for the firms, because then what happens is that your shared values tend to get diluted to some extent, and that coupled with the larger ambition and desire of the partners led us to this decision. I also feel that neither was it there in Bobby's personality nor in any of us to run the firm on any set of values other than in the true spirit of the partnership. And I personally feel that democracy in partnership or in a partnership organization does pose a challenge of sorts. So if you talk to some of the you know partners, large consulting firms, they say, well, partnership is partnership from a profit sharing perspective, but the management of the partnership is really a corporation. Well, I think that's easy said than done, in the sense that partnership poses challenges much beyond those international partnerships. I also felt that one of the most important things that entrepreneurial firms should work on is that if you do not have a larger international institution that lends its set of governance philosophies, good and bad, which we experienced in working in larger Big Four firms, you ought to have a stronger, you know, kind of principle built in over here by way of governance. Though I must hurriedly add that one of the very distinct features of the BMR firm also was the quality of support that was lent by the advisory board. And this was Bobby's initiative to bring in a set of advisory board members who uh, have so much respect in the community and who do have the empowerment to virtually twist your arm or pull you by your ears and tell you, well, buddy, this is right, this is wrong. I think we had people of that stature on our advisory board who had either seen us professionally or who had seen us grow from the time we were associates. And I think that, in my view, played a very, very instrumental role. And the most important decision that got taken did not obviously get taken without the knowledge and understanding of the advisory board. But as we say, that it's not just the wisdom of the founders or the founder partners of the firm, but it's also the larger collective wisdom that our advisory board was lending us. So there was a lot of thinking behind it, which went into it. Of course, I don't think that either Bobby or I thought that we would at a young tender age of 52, 53 find ourselves looking out for alternatives. Too late to take up a job and too early to retire, I guess.
Oh, that was wonderful, Mukesh. But coming to a few questions which have been flashed to me, I'll take maybe two of them. Two questions on partner compensation. They're saying, what is the best model for partner compensation in a professional firm? What is the BMR's experience? How BMR implemented this in broader sense? Very large question which has been sent to me. I know there is no right model which can be given over a webinar, but maybe if you want to run through the principles a few.
I think that at least we, clearly one of the things that is important is what is the revenues that the partner produces and what is the profitability that the partner produces. That becomes an important, certainly, and a material criterion for how you reward a partner. But then depending on what what we at least try to do is to measure partners on 2-3 different other parameters, and so we looked at what our organizational priorities were at any given point in time, and ensured that partners had some role in each of those priorities, and then also allocated compensation based on how they contributed to those priorities. So it could be in hiring people, it could be in developing a pipeline of partners, it could be contributing to some knowledge management initiative, or it could be something which is internal to the firm's operations or whatever it might be. But there were a whole bunch of different things, and so we sort of looked at partners across the financial metric, but when we looked at people, we had also we did 360-degree feedback and things like that. So to look at what people felt about partners, what their peers felt about a partner. So that became an and we allocated a weight to that, to say that besides just revenues revenue should not be the only criterion in my view, or profitability should not be the only criteria. But whatever may be the elements which are important to an organization also need to find their place in the overall reward kind of determination. And you can keep shifting the weight of these criteria from year to year or whatever, but it's important that money is not the only thing which sort of drives this decision.
The second point, Mukesh, should we focus on only one professional, one service line to sharpen the business and to grow? I mean, more tip of the spear kind of strategy, or to try to offer multiple things at the same time? I believe you've answered that in the past, but you want to take that briefly?
There is no harm for any professional. There is no harm for any professional services firm to add different competencies. My experience again, whether it's BMR or even in the Big Four, is that when you add a new competency, don't add just because you want to replicate what others are doing or there is some form of a peer pressure. Make sure that if you really want to differentiate your competencies, you have the right leader who has the right franchise, and that leader is appropriately supported by the organization. We did experience challenges on many of our new initiatives, and one of the ways for us to address that that challenge was that that partner's evaluation then is dependent on what that partner is supposed to do. So if a particular partner is wanting to uh, you know pursue a new service line which is supported by the firm, and the firm is satisfied that we do have the competencies, and as a larger part of the vision of the firm we do want to be in that service line, then please don't put any revenue pressure on that partner. Particularly when you start a new service line, it takes a while for you to establish, it takes a while for you to establish. And more importantly, then you put the whole force of the organization behind that service line. My experience in entrepreneurial firm is that when a new service line is pursued, the buy-in could either be there from the senior partners, or that's what the CEO's vision is. But the larger buy-in does not come in from the group of partners, and hence that person finds himself not being adequately supported. I think for any new service line, that partner has to be supported by all the partners, because without that, you will never be able to take off that new service. And then it reflects fully on the firm, besides causing morale issue with that particular partner. So pursue it, provided you got through it, you have the larger force of the organization, you're entirely backing it, and that you know that you have the right leader to lead that. Now, it's very much possible that despite taking all these efforts, that service line does not work. So what? Entrepreneurs are not just to succeed. Entrepreneurs are there to learn from experiences why it did not succeed. And we've had those experiences in BMR as well. And you need to embrace those learnings and see how you can be more sharper and wiser when you do something else. But an entrepreneurial firm cannot stop from doing into it. But make sure that you ticked all the boxes, and that you don't at a later stage regret that you either did not choose the right leader or you did not have the backing of the entire organization.
Wonderful. Wonderful. One last question, if you can answer that, and then maybe we can wind this session up. I think we are already 15 minutes above time. Do you think that inorganic growth is possible for professional firms of smaller size by acquiring other firms, or it is a bad idea? I mean, this is a question which is the last question which has just come to me.
So I think I don't think there's any. It's not a bad idea. It's just I would only say that the same thing that when you do if there is anything inorganic, then I think the one big thing which is critical and which is underappreciated and underinvested in is this whole business about the firm culture, and who you are, what you are, and if you've been reasonably good at doing what you're doing, then you will have created some form of culture in the organization. And when you do anything inorganic, then the culture is bound to be different. So so what will happen will be a culture will blend, and you'll produce something which is an amalgam of both the firm's cultures. But if you have to make sure that in doing so, you preserve all the valuable parts of your culture, and they don't get subsumed or lost in the acquisition process. So you have to calibrate the acquisition in a way where you are confident that, or at least mindful that you're not going to lose your culture in the process. So maybe do a smaller inorganic transaction, assimilate that, and then as you get more confidence, then you can do something larger. But and you can experiment that by getting into alliances rather than doing straight acquisitions or straight combinations, so that you can see whether when you work together, are you able to are you on the same wavelength common, is are on important things which come up. Do you have a relatively aligned way of thinking, etc. And then then you can combine, acquire, do whatever. Or you acquire when you have confidence that your culture is strong enough to sort of sustain after the acquisition. Is the way that I would look at it.
Wouldn't that also apply to any senior level hire and equi hire? I mean, if you hire a partner, maybe a group of partners, and they come from, say, another large organization, they have a sense of a culture, sense of doing things differently. And an Indian firm would have its own historical, traditional sense of working. I mean, there is always a, shall I say, conflict or a clash between them.
Yeah, so I think that it's very true, and it's an issue, and you have to sort of decide, so whether you acquire a team or you acquire a firm, these are issues which you need to think about. I mean, again, going back to an Anderson example, of all the 5 firms that was there, Anderson was a firm which was regarded as internationally as the firm which had the most unique culture and the most consistent culture across the globe amongst all the people that were part of the Anderson 100,000 or 150,000 people that were there. And it was because it was a firm, they had a fetish about culture, and the firm grew almost entirely organically rather than doing any acquisitions. So while Ernst and Winnie became, and Arthur Young became Ernst and Young, and PwC was Pricewaterhouse, and Coopers and Lybrand, and Coopers was also an independent firm, and Lybrand was another firm, and then became C&L, and then became PwC, and all of that stuff. Anderson never did any big merger, so it never acquired, it never did anything, because it had a fetish for its culture and said that anything that we do from outside is going to be dilutive to our culture, and we want to do whatever we can to preserve the culture. So I think that it's a question of where you lay your priorities and how you want to protect.
Wonderful. Mukesh, any last words?
No, so I think Bobby touched the most important point on culture. Culture integration is the most critical thing, not just for a entrepreneurial domestic firm, but even for international firms. If you actually study some of the largest integrations that have happened globally, whether in the context of Capgemini, EY, you will see culture coming out very clearly. Coming back more closer to the reality, if so first of all, there is no harm in growing inorganically, but I think what the management and the leadership will have to stay more alert on culture integration. I think in my view, we tend to undermine, certainly for one, if my learnings from BMR was that certainly I undermine the importance of culture integration. And the reason I talk about this inflection point was in 2014, when we were sitting and looking at the next 10 years, and we drew up a business plan. And I vividly recall in that business plan, there was a chart that said there is a Modi factor that will play out in the economy if there is a change in power. And in anticipation of that, what should we do? Now, how does a professional services firm grow? It grows on the strength of partners. So we expanded our partnership by almost 50%, which represented a combination of internal candidates, senior hire, lateral hires from outside, and the acquisitions, the small acquisitions that we made. And I personally felt that that growth in the size of the partnership was a fairly resounding statement that we made. But I for one undermine the importance of culture integration. If I have to go back on my learnings, I would say that I would get that right, because all of these inorganic growth strategies may be futile or may actually cause a larger sense of imbalance in the organization if you don't get the culture right.
I think that's enough time that we have today. Mukesh and Bobby, I thank you. I think it's been a wonderful having this conversation. I must say it has been, it's a brilliant, I've enjoyed this last 1.5, 2 hours with you. And I believe all my colleagues and so many people who joined us to listen to both of you would certainly have enjoyed this. This is indeed is a treasure trove of experience, and I think it is people who have done it who are speaking. So it is really coming from the heart and with a lot of experience. I must thank both of you for your invaluable time and sharing your thoughts and your experiences so candidly and so openly with us. I really appreciate your time, Bobby and Mukesh. And on behalf of everyone, I must thank you for everything.
Welcome, and we enjoyed it. And I will, since the last question was on culture, I will send you a small 6-minute YouTube clip, which will just re-emphasize the importance of culture. This was a YouTube film that was shot in Macau on the firm, and I hope you enjoy that film.
Certainly, and I'll distribute it to all our delegates as well. Thank you, Mukesh. Thank you, Bobby. Take care.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Bobby. Thank you.